Hey, good morning. Joining us right at the top of the show, Georgia 9th. I'm your host, BKP, Georgia 9th District Congressman, Republican ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Doug Collins. Congressman Collins, welcome to the show this morning.
Brian, it's always good to be with you.
All right, let's start right out with our couple minutes we have together. Let's talk about government shutdown. Now, there's a lot of, I call it sensationalizing, hyping of the situation, but let's put it in context in coming from you, our congressman in the 9th District. Do you consider the southern border a crisis? Is there a crisis on our southern border today?
There is, and it has been for really, frankly, over 30 years. I mean, or more. This is an issue that has got to be dealt with. The president is framing it correctly, and the real reason is the reason he's framing it correctly is because the border security is always seemingly the second, place in everybody's thought, and especially among Democrats up here. They don't want to deal with border security. They want to deal with everything else. So when we look at it from that perspective, he's trying everything. The clearest picture for the folks in the 9th District yesterday should be this. The president, at the end of the meeting, before he walked out, said this. He said, Ms. Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, if we open the government back up very quickly, in 30 days, would you be willing to give any money for border security and wall? And she said no. At that point, she made it very clear. Her priorities is not American jobs, not government workers, not the things she claims. It was those who are trying to come into our country illegally. Yes, this is a crisis.
Well, let me ask you this, because you went right into the meeting yesterday, and like I said, a lot of people in the media to the left, they're saying their narrative today is temper tantrum, and he stormed out and he hit the table and walked out. But what your understanding happened there yesterday is no matter if the president would have stayed 15 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour and a half, nothing was going to change where Speaker Pelosi was concerned as far as funding concerning the crisis on the southern border?
No, she is so beholden to her left. She is so beholden to a narrative that says that, even though, and I made this point in many interviews and discussions that we've had, look, Democrats who are not conservative, like Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Chuck Schumer, all these folks have voted for border walls as late as a couple of years ago, but in massive form back in the 2006 timeframe. This is something that they have just determined that this is their political wedge issue coming off an election. They're saying, we're going to continue this fight. Her left is pushing her. She doesn't have a good idea. If you were to ask, and I was on the floor with many Democrats yesterday who came up to me and said, how do we get out of this? And I said, well, admit that we need some security and then negotiate on the rest. But it's just they're beholden to it. They believe the narrative is in their favor. I don't personally believe that, because when you really get down to it, it's simply a position of, do you protect Americans and look after our security and find a way to fix our immigration system, or do you simply side with those who are trying to bull rush their way into the U.S.?
I know you're on the House of Representatives side, but just being up there in D.C., what are you hearing across the hall there in the Senate? Do you hear that the Senate Republicans are remaining unified, as the president said, or do you feel there's going to be cracks in the Senate? And I know you can't speak for them, but you are up there. What do you hear that you can share with us this morning where the Republican Senate's concerned?
Well, I'm hearing, and look, Lindsey Graham and I, he's my counterpart in essence in the Senate. He's being chairman since they kept majority. But we talked over the break. We've talked and kept in touch with them and others, even including the administration. My only concern right now is they're trying to fix stuff. They're sort of trying to give away stuff that at the end of the day is, yes, incentive for Democrats. I'm talking like DACA and things that do need to be fixed. Don't get me wrong. But at a certain point in time, we're not doing the things that I believe need to be done, and that is take away the incentive where you have incentive for parents to give their kids over to coyotes to bring across the border, because once they get here, because of the victim bill that we have up here, they have to be turned over to relatives in the United States. We never see them again. You have the Flores issue, where it was an agreement in which when families come across, we can only keep them in custody for 20 days. Then we have to let them out, and it could be years before their asylum claim is taken up. And then you have asylum itself. Now, this is something you have to understand. It is a very valid legal argument for immigration if someone needs to come to the U.S. and apply for asylum. The interesting issue is we have such a low credible fear standard, which is the first step on saying, I need to come here because I have a credible fear for my life and safety back where I'm coming from. 90% of folks who claim credible fear at the border will get in. The interesting part, though, Brian, is this. Once adjudicated, once going before an immigration judge, less than 20% of those are actually found to have credible fear. The problem is it could take years in our system right now to get that thing through. So I'm concerned the Senate is trying, but I'm also concerned they may be on the wrong path here.
I do understand some Americans will not, government workers will not be receiving their paycheck. But I will tell you this, Congressman, on the outside of the Potomac here, out here in rural America, I think the fact that we found out just a partial shutdown equals 800,000 government jobs is something of interest that I think gets glossed over. But I do think that's playing out there in America as far as saying, wow, that equaled 800,000 jobs. So there's something in itself. Now, Friday, paychecks don't go out. And so let me ask you, as far as a government shutdown, as far as you yourself, Friday, do we stay the course as Republicans and we say, hey, this pressure is the only way we're going to get border security? And does that border security to you equal having to have a barrier?
Yes, I think it has to be a barrier. I mean, look, our Border Patrol agents say that barriers work. Now, in all fairness, would 2,000 miles of a 30-foot concrete fence? No, that's not practical. Border officials and immigration officials tell you don't do that because, number one, you got some private property concerns, but you've also got some areas with the river. You got some, mountainous areas and stuff where you just, frankly, is not practical. We can cover that with other areas, but having border, security wall, fence, however the president, is this, the steel. I mean, I like that as well. But I mean, if you look at it, those do work in the areas where they're set up to work. It does do that. The Secretary Nielsen has made that very clear, and I'm a favor of that as well. So I think we've got to look at this from a total perspective. Brian, you and I've talked about it before. Immigration has to be fixed. We've got too much perverse incentive for people just to come across our borders and to do it in ways that are not legal. Legal immigration works. Legal immigration is something we need. Illegal immigration is hurting us, and it's causing a strain on our systems at the southern border. It's causing strain on our infrastructure systems. And so those are the things I think the president's fighting for. Come Friday, it's going to be difficult because, TSA workers, others will miss their first paycheck come Friday if we don't get this solved. I believe this needs to be solved. I believe the Democrats need to come to the table. I believe Ms. Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have got to realize that they're hurting Americans by even not negotiating, by saying no to anything the president says. We've got to look at this in a longer term fashion. But at the end of the day, the president is looking out, what I believe, for the American people, while the Democrats are looking out for those trying to bull rush our borders. As
we've said many times, Congressman, quit running around with the mop if you haven't fixed the leak, right?
Until that pipe on the other side of the basement is fixed, you got nothing but water in the basement.
Exactly. Let's move to something else. Has there been any meetings this year in 2019 with the House Judiciary Committee? I know you're ramping up with staff. We got an email on that, and you're getting settled in there as the ranking Republican member on the minority side. Has there been any meetings with Jerry Nadler and the committee, or what's the schedule? And what do you see the direction Jerry Nadler, Congressman, the chairman of the House Judicial Committee, what direction do you see him going in to open up 2019?
Well, at this point in time, we're getting everything set up. Yes, I've had meetings with Chairman Nadler. I mean, Jerry and I have known each other for the time I've been in Congress. And look, I've made it very clear to him, if he wants to do things that we've worked on in the past, like First Step Act, like the Music Modernization Act, where we actually work to find bipartisan solutions, I'm all there. But I've also told him, if he goes off on tangents, then there will be a battle, and it will be a battle that we intend on winning. So it's going to be interesting. We've not actually set the committee up. The Democrats, and again, this always happens in a transition of power setup. They've not got everything together. They've not been able to populate committees. So we're looking at that probably in about another week. We've already butted heads on a few things. I mean, he threatened to subpoena the acting Attorney General Whitaker. I reminded him he couldn't do that. We haven't set up the committee rules yet, and the only way he could do that was with my consent, and he wasn't getting that. And we thought in the press a little bit, on those kind of things. So it's going to be contentious, but I think hopefully at a certain point in time we can work through those items. But if he thinks that we're just going to sit down and lay down to an agenda that they won't, they're sadly mistaken. And they've already put out two bills that are very concerning. H.R. 1 was their premier, quote, piece of legislation. Brian, if you go through this, and readers can look this up in the text, there's just some blatantly unconstitutional issues there. I mean, they're talking about what states can do, and it overreaches just dramatically. Again, it's a feel-good piece of legislation that, in the end of the day, not only doesn't do anything, but actually disenfranchises legal voters. This is the problem I'm having with it. And then H.R. 8. This is the bill that they introduced, it'll come through the Judiciary Committee on universal background checks. Let's just frankly stop saying that and just say what they're wanting to regulate is private sales. And that's all they're wanting to do. But yet they don't want to do it with a registry. They're saying, oh, we can't go to registry, because they know at the end of the day, if that happens, then people would balk on this. The bill they put forward is simply something to solve or salve their supporters, and it does nothing. In fact, it's a crime to actually tell these people it would actually help them.
Tom Steyer said yesterday he was not going to run for president. He was going to invest $40 million in his continued campaign to move the ball forward to impeach the president of the United States. My question to you on the House side, do you feel good that your counterpart on the Senate side, which has majority, Lindsey Graham, anything they try to do on the House, he will counter on the Senate side? Do you feel good about that?
I do. I think, look, at this point, I will say, Chairman Nadler and even Speaker Pelosi on this, they don't even like to get close to to impeachment. Chairman Nadler is very squeamish when he's even asked about it. He talks about it, but he's definitely not one of the drum beaters on it. And Ms. Pelosi's not either, because they recognize the fact, number one, they don't have anything to impeach the president on, number one. That's the first and foremost thing. But also they realize that in doing so, it just so polarizes the nation and would taint, frankly, the 2020 election. They go back to the Clinton impeachments in the late 90s, and they saw the political fallout from it. So, look, we're prepared for that. My committee, my chair, our leader McCarthy, we've already had meetings on discussions, the what-if scenario. So, look, we're ready if that happens. But at this point in time, the Senate and I will be working together where we can't stop some things. Lindsey and I have already discussed how they can.
All right, we got a couple things here because we're coming up at the end of our time we have with you this morning. Let me ask you this: how do you feel about maybe some more cooperation from the Department of Justice with the pending confirmation new Attorney General William Barr coming in? Because I want you to take just a minute and talk about the letter you, Mark Meadows, Congressman Meadows, and Congressman Jim Jordan sent United States Attorney General Huber a letter on January 7th. You guys sent a letter on the 18th of 2018 in March asking for a special counsel. That got rejected by Jeff Sessions, but he was put in there to investigate. We don't have time to go through the thorough investigation, and he stood up the committee in December to testify. Put all that together for us, and I know a minute is not a lot of time to do that, but could you put that together and what you expect out of that?
I can. Look, we just expect them to move forward on the investigation. My concern was, and I think Jim Jordan's concern and others was, is they put it out in Utah and they just sort of expect it to go away. It's sort of like they want to put it out there. We say we're doing it, but we just haven't got the information. Now, he did give a quick, a summary update, I know, to former Chairman Goodlatte and Ranking Member Nadler. We've not seen that yet. We're just asking to say, let's move this forward. We still believe that there probably needs to be a special counsel. Brian, I can't get into the details of just the problems at DOJ. It is problematic that needs to be fixed. And William Barr, I'm hopeful, will come in clean house and we have a fresh start.
I want to get back on that one day real soon, Congressman, because the letter does reference DOJ and the FBI and what they did and may not have done concerning bias, and we don't have enough time to go into that depth. That leaves a lot open, but I hope we can come back to that real soon. I want you to leave this morning talking about the First Step Act. You spent a lot of time with several others in Congress, the criminal justice reform. Matthew Charles, and we wish him well, was the first one released under that. Tell us a little bit of what that meant to you last year, changing the criminal justice system with the First Step Act.
One of the highlights of my tenure up here, and we've been able to do a lot of neat stuff, and Brian, you and I have talked about a lot of it, but standing in the Oval Office with the president right before Christmas, right after Christmas, and right before Christmas, and having that bill signed getting to talk with the president, as we were talking about, and seeing the faces in the room of people who have so put, so much into that, and then hearing the story, like you just referenced as well, of someone who has benefited from it. I made the comment in the Oval Office. I said this. I said, Mr. President, and he was looking at me, and I said, many times you'll sign a bill and it's simply lines on a page. I said, but this bill has faces behind the lines. And it just couldn't be more evident there. This is what happens when this place does what it should do, and that's negotiate, work hard. Took 2.5 years, 3 years to get that done, and that's what can actually happen. And I'm just so glad that we were able to take that up here to the national level. What we've seen good on the state level in Georgia, and and the president deserves, and Jared Kushner deserves a lot of credit for that. We also had a lot of help in the Senate, and those are the kind of things I think even in this divisive Congress we can continue to build on as we go forward.
Isn't the First Step Act a real proof that the president can go in and negotiate something that's very important to many Americans in this country and not throw allegedly a temper tantrum, as the media wants to say, and get something done? Isn't that really an example that something can get done that affects a lot of Americans? And maybe the Democrats would like to look at it that way, as with border security and funding the wall. Just my words, Congressman.
No, I think actually it's even a little more poignant than that. The president, when we first started, and Jared Kushner and I and others talked to him about that, he was actually not as in favor of it. He had been told things in the past, from the law and order crowd that this can't be done. What I saw that was impressive the most to me was he was willing to listen and change. And I think that is what you need in a chief executive. And I think President Trump exhibited that tremendously in this process.
Congressman, I know the people I know in the 9th District strongly support the President of the United States, so we ask you to stay strong in your support of the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and we wish you well up there in what we call the battle here at home.
That is it. Well, y'all have a great day. BKP, you have a good one. See you.
Thank you, Congressman. We went a couple minutes, folks, just over. I was told 8:15. I wanted to make sure that the First Step Act, and here's what I want to do. I want to come back. I want to take a brief break before Carla's Corner. We're going to take a brief break. We're going to come back. We're going to spend about 5 minutes. Carla's Corner is coming up at 8:30. I want to spend about 5 minutes on what we just discussed. Can we break that down? Because I did leave something open that you're probably wondering about that we need to clear up for you there at home. So take us to break, Josh. We'll be back. Thank you, Congressman Collins, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes.